Today we're going to be continuing with our thesis from last week, and that is because there is low impact news this week, apart from a few readings here and there. Mostly what we had last week, which is the sentiment, is going to trickle over to this week. And we'll be looking at the NASDAQ, the USD index, and other few pairs. My name is Samson Mzera, and welcome to this session of the Market Watch series, where we cover the news, the charts, to tell you what's happening and what to expect. So be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Just to quickly cover what the calendar is saying, we have the Canadian CPI coming in later today, and the month-on-month inflation is expected to tick higher. Remember, last time was a negative 0.1%, so you expect it to tick slightly higher. Then next, we have the FOMC meeting minutes, which don't really have such an impact because we already know what they said in the last meeting, and when they meet, usually you already kind of can tell what is going to happen. So the minutes are just a review of what the conversation was all about. So that should be coming in later tomorrow. And we also expect a few pieces of information from the Eurozone, that is the services PMI and things like that. So we are expecting a few releases here and there, but most of the times it should not affect the global macro or the major thesis in the market, which is number one, we are expecting that sentiment or that market expectation that the Fed is going to cut to hold, and it's going to elevate and continue to weaken the dollar. So when you look at the dollar index, the play from yesterday is pretty much the same. We did cross that support level, and it seems like we're heading lower, but we're not heading to new territory. So it's important to mark all those levels where you go lower and lower, because they might provide some support or some breathing room as the trend continues. Also, it's important to note that one of the things that we're expecting this Wednesday is the revisions of the payroll numbers. So usually they revise them from time to time, and for the past, I think, 12 months, the NFP numbers have always been revised downwards. That means whatever reading they put out during NFP, a month or so after doing the revisions, the number always comes in lower. Yeah, so that has been the trend. So we do expect them to do revisions tomorrow, and that might also have a bit of an impact on where the dollar is headed to and how much the Fed is tilted to cut. Remember, the last meeting, they shifted from just focusing on inflation to focusing on both inflation and employment. And that's why we said employment numbers going forward will be even more important, because for the better part of the year, NFP numbers have not really had that huge impact on the market because the Fed focus was on inflation. But after the previous meeting, we did see that huge impact on NFP on the markets in the previous NFP reading. Now tomorrow, we do expect those numbers to be revised. We don't know how they're going to be revised because they were really low last time. But if they get revised lower, then that might provide some room for even further weakness in the dollar. But so far, fears of the economy in the US going into a recession have subsided a bit. Remember, that was the scare in the previous NFP readings. So that has subsided, and that is what is providing that slower downtrend we are witnessing in the dollar. In other news, we're also seeing Chinese buyers paring back on gold purchases. This is because gold has hit a peak of 2,500 plus. So this again is new territory, like we said yesterday. And remember, China is the biggest consumer or the biggest demand driver for gold. And we might start seeing a bit of a cool off in gold because, again, if the biggest demand driver has started to cool off, also we might start seeing a bit of cool off. Every time gold goes to new territories, this usually happens. So while we are in that uptrend that we're observing, it's important to be very careful on how we handle our trajectory upwards. So that's one of the things we'll be watching out for this week. And lastly, the Euro USD pair has really been very strong, and it's because, again, of that thesis of that weakness we are seeing from the dollar side of things. However, those numbers that are coming in on Thursday and Wednesday from Europe are critical to see or to note how strong this trend is going to be. It's still in an uptrend, but how strong is this uptrend going to be? That's going to be heavily reliant on those numbers that come in. Having said that, we'll be keeping you in the loop with anything that transpires. And if you want to trade any of these assets, remember the link is always in the description, and see you in the next one.